Remember that statement that Kath read from the message about being a model, the Baha'i community offering itself to the world as a model? And everyone went, oh. That's what Stephen is going to be addressing this morning. Steve.
Thank you. It's good to be here again and to see everybody. I'm so excited to get a chance all day to talk to you. It's like a family reunion every year. Wanted to thank Kevin again, too, for that beautiful presentation. Thanks. Excuse me. I have the privilege of having Kevin in the area that I serve as a board member, and we've grown very close over the last few years. And I want to say that he's not only a great musician, but he's also a brilliant thinker and a wonderful speaker. And I hope sometime we can get a chance to listen to him speak as well and spend some time with him and get to know him and his culture. It's also real nice to have somebody like that precede you because Abdu'l-Baha said that music does wonderful things for the soul, prepares the soul, and any deficiencies that I have, and I will demonstrate in a few minutes, can be sometimes compensated by this preparation like this. In fact, Abdu'l-Baha said that in the past that these philosophers in Iran who couldn't get a crowd gathered around them to give their discourse would become accomplished musicians, and they'd play their flutes and so on, and people would gather around and so on, and when they get a sufficient crowd, they'd put down their instrument and then go into their discourse. Cap mentioned the acceleration, and I thought about that idea of acceleration, and I'm not a physicist, but I think that acceleration is like, that means you're going faster and faster. It's like velocity divided by time or something like that. And anyway, you're going faster and faster. The Universal House of Justice in their Rizwan message on 140 BE a year and a half ago said that the observable acceleration during the past decade of the two processes described by our beloved guardian, those two processes they described, the disintegration of the old world order and the progress and consolidation of the new world order, may well come to be regarded by future historians as one of the most remarkable features of this period. So they were talking about this acceleration, observable acceleration of these twin processes. And then in the next sentence, the Universal House of Justice said, the recent increase in the very acceleration is even more remarkable. So now acceleration is you're going faster, right? Now they're saying the recent increase in the acceleration is even more remarkable. So not only are you going faster all the time, but you're going faster at a faster rate. I feel, you remember a long time ago when they first started the space thing, most of you do, and they used to show the astronauts training and so on, and they'd show them in those things, and they were like this, That's what I feel like in this cause, in the acceleration. We're just zooming into the future here, as it seems like even 5 or 10 years ago, it wasn't this. I didn't feel this acceleration as a Baha'i. Maybe it was me, but I think that. It's just so many things have started happening like that year after, and even months together. Now we're getting messages from the Universal House of Justice regularly to the Baha'is of the world, and all of a sudden, bang, a message from the House of Justice to the people of the world. It's just incredible. And the acceleration is the twin processes. Okay, it's not just It's not just what's happening inside the faith, but outside the faith as well. Actually, let me explain these twin processes, or try to explain my understanding a little bit for some of you. The Universal House of Justice talked about this great plan of God, tumultuous in its progress, working towards mankind as a whole, tearing down barriers to world unity, and forging humankind into a unified body in the fires of suffering and experience. The working out of God's major plan proceeds mysteriously in ways directed by Him alone. His own major plan, Shoghi Effendi said, using both the mighty and lowly as pawns in His world-shaping game for the fulfillment of His immediate purpose and the eventual establishment of His kingdom on earth. And then the Guardian also talked about a twofold process can be distinguished, each tending in its own way with an accelerated momentum to bring to a climax the forces that are transforming the face of the planet. So it's like a two-edged sword, the Guardian said. On one edge, it's tearing down all the barriers, anything that's preventing us from realizing unity. In fact, Baha'u'llah himself said that all restrictions and limitations have been obliterated by this revelation, and that any institution or organization or any thought even in the world that has its foundation based on any kind of restriction or exclusivity or limitation preventing us from becoming aware of our unity and our oneness has been obliterated, has been destroyed. All right? So the old world order based on this has nothing to stand on. It's disintegrating. All right? Now, on the other edge of the sword, the Guardian said, it's loosening the bonds that tie our hands as Baha'is together. All right? So little by little, as this process, actually it's becoming a lot by a lot, if there's acceleration, our power to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished is getting greater and greater. Remember, the House of Justice reminded us that the power released by Baha'u'llah matches the needs of the times. Well, we have two great contributions to make, it seems to me, to demonstrate the power of the Blessed Beauty's teachings and revelation. All right, there's two great contributions I think we can make. One is, and this is interesting because it's really so obvious. The Universal House of Justice said to the Baha'i youth of the world in May 8th message that they said, by what example are the claims of Baha'u'llah to be judged? How is his healing message to be acknowledged by a skeptical humanity unless our lives reflect to a marked degree the transforming power of the new revelation? There's no other proof that we can show to the world. There's nothing else that can convince the world of the power of Baha'u'llah's revelation other than the way in which it's transformed our lives as Baha'is. That's the most powerful, that's the unique thing that we have to offer the world as proof. There's nothing else that can convince the world. Now, the other thing, which integrates the first, actually, and the House of Justice pointed this out, and Cap mentioned this earlier this morning, and that is that we can demonstrate our ability to settle differences and to solve problems by consultation rather than confrontation, division, and schism, and violence, and so on. All right? So the second part is our ability to consult. All right? This skill that we've all achieved to a marked degree. Now I want to ask you to consider something. Baha'u'llah said that foremost among all the favors given from God to us is this gift of understanding. This gift of understanding, and this is one of the key things in the statement on peace in our Baha'i peace plan too. But this gift of understanding is what distinguishes us from all the other kingdoms of God as human beings, all right? And because Baha'u'llah said that this gift giveth man the power to discern the truth in all things. It helpeth him to discover the secrets of creation. All right? This is the way we can figure out things. Now, Baha'u'llah said, next in rank is the power of vision, the chief instrument whereby understanding can function. This is why Baha'u'llah said, let your vision be world-embracing rather than confined to your own self, because if our understanding is what enables us to accomplish the things, to discover the mysteries in creation and solve the problems of the world, and our understanding is what distinguishes us as creatures in this world. Our vision is the chief instrument through which this understanding can function. So if our vision is broad, then our understanding can function much better. All right, that's the chief instrument through which our understanding can function. Let me give you an example. Now, when you're driving in a car and or riding in a car, for example, and you're looking down right at the ground, you can become sick and nauseated very easily, right? Because if you try to focus in on the ground going by so fast, nothing makes sense. It's all confusing. And if you're like me, it can get up, your stomach even gets upset. Right? But if you lift your head up and you look at the horizon, everything comes into perspective. You know where you're going. It's all calm and so on. You're not sick anymore. Now, Baha'u'llah said, if, however, for a few days in compliance with God's all-encompassing wisdom, outward affairs should run their course contrary to one's cherished desire, this is of no consequence and should not matter. Our intent is that all the friends should fix their gaze on the supreme horizon and cling to that which hath been revealed in the tablets. This is something that distinguishes the Baha'is. We have this perspective, this vision. All right? We're not concentrating on these horrible events occurring in the world on a daily basis or in our life on a fairly regular basis. Our eyes are fixed on the supreme horizon. I'll give you another example. You know how horrible the situation in Iran is. And all of us Baha'is have a tendency to become very sad when we think about these disgusting things occurring in Iran and happening to the Baha'i community and these innocent people over there. And we become upset and sad and so on. Now, imagine that's what's going on a regular basis, daily and so on. Imagine the vision that Abdu'l-Baha offers us of Iran. Here's what he said. Since the dawning of this day star was in Persia, and since from that orient the sun shone upon the west, it is our fondest hope that the flames of love's fire should blaze ever more vehemently in that land, and that there the splendor of this holy face should grow ever more intense. May the tumult of God's cause so shake that land to its foundations, Abdu'l-Baha said. May the spiritual force of His word so manifest itself as to make Iran the core and focus of well-being and peace. May rectitude and conciliation and love and trust issuing forth from Iran bring immortality to all on earth. May she raise on the highest summits the banner of public order, of purest spirituality, of universal peace. So this is the image that the Baha'is have this is the vision that the Baha'is have of Iran. If we look at the daily events going on there, we can become sad and overwhelmed with depression. If we fix our gaze on the supreme horizon and see what will become of Iran and what the future holds, we can understand these things. Remember, Baha'u'llah said that if, in compliance with God's all-encompassing wisdom, outward affairs should run their course contrary to one's cherished desire, this is of no consequence and should not matter. Remember that there's two things going on. There's the God's plan, and then there's our part. And sometimes God's plan interferes with our part. And we can't figure that out. We don't know why. But we should know that it's God's plan. And we should just have this vision that enables us to see. Now, we're going so fast in so many directions, it really requires that we focus on the vision that our writings give us. And I want to ask you to consider some of the ways that the faith is growing. For example, there's this constant expansion, right? There's more believers coming into the faith all the time. In fact, hundreds of thousands this year into the faith all around the world. So we're growing out, we're gaining more members. At the same time, there's this consolidation. All right? We're growing in, and we're becoming stronger. The foundations of world peace and of this new world order are becoming strengthened every day. So we're growing, we're expanding, we're consolidating, and at the same time, this whole thing is moving in the direction of the most great peace. So there's so many dimensions in which we're moving. And as Baha'is, and we're going at a breakneck pace. And not only that, but we're going into areas that we've never gone before. Humanity has never been here before. It's uncharted waters. So it really requires that we fix our gaze on the horizon, on the supreme horizon. Now, consider this lesser peace. Baha'u'llah said to the kings, he said, "You blew it. I offered you the most great..." This is a paraphrase. He said, "I offered you the most great peace. All right. I gave you that chance and you blew it. You did not accept it. You rejected it. So now I'm offering you another chance. And it's called the lesser peace." And he said, cling to that. So the lesser peace we understand as Baha'is is that these nations, these leaders of the world, will agree to lay down their weapons. But it's like this. It's like a dead body, this lesser peace. It's like, for example, remember that Baha'u'llah said that there's two ways that we can prevent crime in society. One way is to make the penalties for committing the crimes so severe that nobody would want to commit these crimes. All right? No one would ever want to face these penalties. They would be so horrible. All right? The consequences. He said that will have a temporary effect. He said, Baha'u'llah told us that the real lasting way to prevent crime is to change the hearts of the people. And that when our hearts are changed, we'll love each other and respect each other so much that we couldn't even imagine committing a crime that would hurt somebody. All right? Now, the lesser peace, in a way, is like the first solution to preventing crime. It's going to be, even Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi explained this. They said that it's going to be this pact, this agreement, that we'll lay down our weapons, all the countries of the world will lay down our weapons and so on, but if there's an aggressor, that all the countries of the world will rise up against that one and put them down using all the means that they can. And so that's a horrible consequence for the aggression. But it's not a lasting peace. And see, to the Baha'is, now we have to remember also, there's this idea that that the Baha'is have, that we're just going to sort of stand around and when the world has reached this agreement and so on and established this lesser peace, then we're going to waltz in and give them our teachings and then carry them on to the most great peace. Well, we know that this message of the lesser peace, this idea comes from Baha'u'llah. This is part of the teachings of Baha'u'llah. And we're the deliverers of the teachings of Baha'u'llah. So we have everything to do with this lesser peace. But to the Baha'is, the lesser peace is just a milestone. Right? It's just something that will pass along the way towards the most great peace. That's our perspective. We're thinking about the oneness of mankind, something that we can work on right now. The House of Justice has pointed out that this oneness of mankind is not only our ultimate goal, but our operating principle. Right? It's our operating principle as well as our ultimate goal. So that we're working on the most great peace right now. We're working to achieve that, and we'll pass this thing called the lesser peace along the way. It will just be a milestone. It'll be a very important milestone, obviously. But it's not something that we're fixing our gaze on. We're fixing our gaze on the most great peace. This kingdom that promised by Baha'u'llah. And we're working on that right now. The key is that these teachings, this oneness of mankind, this pivot round which all the teachings of Baha'u'llah revolve, that these teachings, the spirit released in the world, needs to incarnate itself into an order to canalize, as Shoghi Effendi says, so that it can be delivered to all the peoples of the world, pure and unadulterated. Cap alluded to this network that the Baha'is are building. It's really the pattern, the nucleus, and the pattern for the New World Order. Now, I want to ask you to consider the way I look at this. This force released by Baha'u'llah in the world is created this twin process. Here's the way Shoghi Effendi talked about it. He said that God-born force, irresistible in its sweeping power, incalculable in its potency, unpredictable in its course, mysterious in its workings, and awe-inspiring in its manifestations. The Bab wrote, it vibrates within the innermost being of all created things, and which, according to Baha'u'llah, has through its vibrating influence upset the equilibrium of the world and revolutionized its ordered life. This force was released. It's the same as when all the manifestations of God have appeared in the world. There was this spirit released in the world, this force with a capital F. It's acting even as a two-edged sword, under our very eyes, sundering on one hand the age-old ties which for centuries have held together the fabric of civilized society, and unloosening on the other the bonds that still fetter the infant and as yet unemancipated faith of Baha'u'llah. Now, the Guardian, Shoghi Effendi, wrote that few will fail to recognize that this spirit breathed by Baha'u'llah upon the world can never permeate and exercise an abiding influence unless and until it incarnates itself in a visible order. And that's what we're striving to build. This foundation, this pattern, this nucleus for the New World Order. So when we're sitting in our assemblies consulting, we've got our eyes on the most great peace, right? Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. The point is that nobody, Baha'u'llah said, no man knoweth how to discern light from darkness or distinguish guidance from error. There's no one alive today, no one in the world today that can make just decisions, that can ensure the integrity and flexibility of the teachings of Baha'u'llah, except these twin institutions of the guardianship and the Universal House of Justice, and the national assemblies, and the local assemblies, the counselors and the board members. This administrative order is what ensures this flexibility and integrity. Now, what I want to talk about now is the spiritual part of spiritual assemblies, or the spiritual part of spiritual consultation, because this is what makes the Baha'is unique. The need is very great, Shodi Effendi said, everywhere in the world, in and outside the faith, for a true spiritual awareness to pervade and motivate people's lives. No amount of administrative procedure or adherence to rules can take the place of this soul characteristic, this spirituality which is the essence of man. Now, I thought of something when I started thinking about us sitting in our assemblies and on our committees and task forces and so on, consulting and struggling, trying to learn that skill and so on. And I thought of the problems that we have in our communities sometimes, the difficulties we have with each other and with ourselves and so on. And I started thinking, how the guardian said that the earth, he talks about the earth being in a state of pregnancy, and that this new world order is stirring within the womb. And he talks about the birth pangs of the new world order and so on. I thought about these Baha'i communities and these little problems that we have in our communities, and I thought, they must be like morning sickness. Just to stretch this analogy a little farther. Now, in our household, we've been through morning sickness a couple of times, and it seems like it's the most horrible thing on earth at the time. And it seems like it's never going to end. But it does, and the memory of it doesn't seem to last either. So I think that that's another thing about this vision. I don't know, no, we can't carry that one that far. This idea that really the Universal House of Justice, again, Cap mentioned this in his talk today because it's so important, and it's such an important part, it seems like, of this statement from the House of Justice on Peace, that we consider the spiritual principles, the moral attitudes. All right, when we're in other words, let me see if I can find it. The Universal House of Justice, in the statement on peace, said that we should it said, another point is that the primary challenge in dealing with issues of peace is to raise the context to the level of principle as distinct from pure pragmatism. That means that and that's what, right after that is where they said world leaders would do well to consider the principles involved when they're making decisions and consulting. And really, this is what we're learning to do as Baha'is, and this comes directly from Baha'u'llah. In fact, in a few years, we're going to be celebrating something very important, and that is the covenant of Baha'u'llah. And we celebrate that all the time, but in a few years, just after Baha'u'llah's passing, of course, is when when this covenant, this almighty covenant that Baha'u'llah made with men was instituted. All right? So this book, the Book of the Covenant, the Kitabi-at, we're going to hopefully have a big celebration in a few years when to mark the release of this. Baha'u'llah said, "Say, O servants, let not the means of order be made the cause of confusion, and the instruments of union an occasion for discord." So this idea comes right from Baha'u'llah, right from his covenant. He said, let not the means of order be made the cause of confusion, and the instrument of union an occasion for discord. So this is something that the Baha'is are learning. Our mindset is developing along these lines, that we're not just looking for the most pragmatic, efficient solutions to things. We're always considering the spiritual principles involved. We're always thinking of unity and the oneness of mankind first. Shoghi Effendi said, administrative efficiency should always be accompanied by an equal degree of love and devotion and of spiritual development. In these days when the cause is still in its infancy, great care must be taken lest mere administrative routine stifles the spirit which must feed the body of the administration itself. That spirit is its propelling force and the motivating power of its very life. Now, when I think of this, the Guardians talked about spiritual development. I thought about us in our communities and our spiritual development in our communities and so on. And then I ran across this by Abdu'l-Baha. He said, I wish to train you until you have no other thought, no other motive, no other wish than service to the cause, in the cause of Baha'u'llah. In fact, he even went on to say that he said that there is this breed of horses. Let me see if I can find it. In Persia, there is a wonderful breed of horses which are trained to run long distances at great speed. They are most carefully trained at first. They're taken out into the fields and made to run for a short course. At the commencement of their training, they are not able to run far, Abdu'l-Baha said. The distance is gradually increased. They become thinner and thinner and wiry and lean, but their strength increases. Finally, after months of rigid training, their swiftness and endurance becomes wonderful, and they're able to run at full speed across rough country at a great distance. At first, this would have been impossible. Not until they become trained, thin and wiry, can they endure this severe test. He said, in this way I shall train you, until your powers of endurance become so increased that you will serve the cause of God continually without other motive, without other thought or wish. This is my desire. So all these little things that we're going through in our communities and so on are training us. Little by little, Abdu'l-Baha said, kam, 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 kam. And we need this kind of training. When we think of, especially in our consultation, you know how it is in consultation, right? Actually, let me tell you, I have to tell you about something about consultation. You know, in the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned about this gift of understanding, which was foremost among all the favors given by God to us. All right. Well, I ran across this from Baha'u'llah, where he said that the maturity of the gift of understanding is made manifest through consultation. And it's becoming more and more apparent that this is what we have to offer. This is a great gift that we have to offer the world, to demonstrate that we can solve problems through consultation rather than confrontation and violence and so on. So we've been at it for a while now. We're practicing consultation, and I think that I have a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share on consultation, and that is that probably all of you have been involved in the consultative process and so on, and you know how that it doesn't come easy. But the key thing is to raise it to that level of spiritual consultation. Because we all have lots of differences down here, but when we go up, we raise the context of our consultation to that spiritual level. We're all in agreement because we all love Baha'u'llah and we all want to have world peace and so on. So up here, we can make audacious plans and confidently carry them out and get along with each other and so on. But whenever we slip down, that's when we have these problems, see? And so it's very important when we're consulting, when we come into our meetings and so on, to say lots and lots of prayers to sort of float up here so that we can consult on that level. And then, if you feel like you're slipping, then you have to say, excuse me, I'd like to say a prayer. Or, excuse me, I'll step out of the room. Or, I think John's losing it. Maybe he needs to step out of the room. In any event, that's what keeps us. That's the great contribution we have to make. It's the spiritual part of the spiritual consultation. Now, actually, what the House of Justice said is that they were offering, they offered the Baha'i experience as a model for study to the people of the world. They offered our experience, right? What we've learned, what we've gained, what we've achieved, and so on. Now, I've got a quotation for that one too. It goes like this. It's from Shoghi Effendi. So you see, your sense of inadequacy, your realization of your own unworthiness is not unique at all. Do you think that quote fits? Whenever I think about that being offered as a model for study, I think of how inadequate I feel. Well, the Guardian said there's wisdom in this feeling of inadequacy. He said there's wisdom in it, and this is it. He said, the wisdom of it is this. It is such seemingly weak instruments that demonstrate that God is the power achieving the victories and not men. He said to this person, he said, if you are wealthy, prominent, strong individual, who looked at going out travel teaching and pioneering as fun and all these things, he said, any service you render and victories that you have would be laid to your personality and not the cause of God. But because the reverse is true, your services will be a witness to the power of Baha'u'llah and the truth of his faith. So even there's a wisdom in our feeling inadequate. I think that the key is that we're going at a breakneck speed into uncharted waters, and it requires us to be extraordinarily innovative and creative. And that's what the House of Justice said in their statement on peace to the people of the world. They said that when we raise this issue to a higher context, it does a couple of things. One is, let me read it. The essential merit of spiritual principle is that it not only presents a perspective which harmonizes with that which is immanent in human nature, it also induces an attitude, a dynamic, a will, an aspiration, which facilitate the discovery and implementation of practical measures. Okay? So raising it up to raising up the context of this issue, this discussion of anything that we're doing to the spiritual plane helps us keep our vision fixed on that supreme horizon. But it also helps generate ideas. Generate means create things that weren't there before. It helps generate ideas and helps us be innovative and creative and achieve or find the practical, pragmatic solutions to these problems. All right? I think the thing that we have to remember as Baha'is is that the key thing is trying. Our efforts are the victories. Our efforts are the victories. In fact, I read recently that when Martha Root was in China, she told about this letter she had from Abdu'l-Baha, where Abdu'l-Baha said, more or less, he said, you take care of the sowing the seeds and I'll take care of the harvest. You leave the harvest to me. And so really it's that if we look at that, we gain a lot of confidence because we see ourselves as victors. Because any little thing that we do is more than would be done if we hadn't. And any effort in the path of Baha'u'llah is much greater than we think oftentimes. Right? And that effort itself is a victory. We leave the results. A group of youth recently and a few adults went up travel teaching along the border of Minnesota and Ontario and Manitoba and so on. And we spent a weekend teaching on among the Indian people up there. And they were able to form a new assembly, and there were I think there were 7 enrollments, new Baha'is and so on. But some of the youth that were with us were used to a lot more happening than that. And some of the people were kind of sad and so on that we didn't accomplish more and so on. And what's happened is that in a week since we were there, there's been more than double the number of declarations, that occurred while we were there. So there in the week following this, there were more than double the declarations that occurred that weekend while we were there. And now they're making plans for a conference in that area, a council fire, and so on. And things are just on fire in that region. And it's all as a result of just the efforts that these Baha'i youth did in traveling there. Even though they came away feeling like, well, I don't know if we accomplished that much, or, we've gone other places and we've achieved more, it seems like, in hand and so on. The things that they accomplished are outstanding. And I think we're going to see, it's just that whole region is on fire as a result of those youth going there. If the Baha'is will but do their part, the House of Justice said, however unpromising the prospect, Baha'u'llah is able to open doors and change conditions in ways beyond our understanding. In fact, the House of Justice said, any evaluation of a situation is entirely misleading if it does not take this supreme power into consideration, whereas a constant consciousness of dependence upon him enables the Baha'is to formulate audacious plans and confidently carry them through to completion in the face of seemingly insuperable obstacles. Now, I've got good news and bad news. This is written on behalf of Shoghi Effendi. He said, a healthy social life and Baha'i work can go hand in hand. But not always in times of crisis such as these days the cause is passing through, and the world when great sacrifice can alone meet the demands of the situation. We have to remember that our mission is unspeakably glorious. In fact, the guardian said soon after he became guardian, he said, let us pray to God that in these days of world-encircling gloom, when dark forces of nature, of hate, rebellion, anarchy, and reaction are threatening the very stability of human society, when the most precious fruits of civilization are undergoing severe and unparalleled tests, we may all realize more profoundly than ever that though but a mere handful amidst the seething masses of the world, we are in this day the chosen instruments of God's grace, that our mission is most urgent and vital to the fate of humanity, and fortified by these sentiments, arise to achieve God's purpose for mankind. In conclusion, I want to read something from a message from the Universal House of Justice. That idea about the acceleration again and this twin process that's happening. Events of the most profound significance are taking place in the world. The river of human history is flowing at a bewildering speed. Age-old institutions are collapsing. Traditional ways are being forgotten. And newly born ideologies, which were fondly expected to take their place, are withering and decaying before the eyes of their disillusioned adherents. Amidst this decay and disruption, assailed from every side by the turmoil of the age, the order of Baha'u'llah, unshakably founded on the Word of God, protected by the shield of the divine covenant, and assisted by the hosts of the concourse on high, is rising in every part of the world. As Baha'is, we have this confidence in this peace plan. It doesn't matter. The thing that the Baha'is offer to the world, if they want to study our Baha'i experience, is that we can overcome any obstacle. Because number one, this is a religion. This is from God. And what we're trying to achieve is inevitable. We know it's going to happen. All right? So we've got that confidence. Number two, we've got that vision. That no matter how disgusting the situation looks, if we look down at the daily events going by at such a rapid rate, we can easily get sick, and we can see how sad and depressed the rest of the world is. But our Baha'i experience is that we can constantly be optimistic because we've fixed our gaze on the supreme horizon. We know that this is inevitably going to be achieved, and we have this great confidence in our fellow human beings. That's what we offer to the Baha'is as a model for study. That experience on a collective level that we can solve problems through consultation, and on an individual level that we must never discount ever, even for a second. That what's happened in our own individual lives and how this power of Baha'u'llah has transformed our lives. That's the proof. That's the convincing proof that we offer to humanity. The Universal House of Justice said, the powers released by Baha'u'llah match the needs of the times. It is a time for rejoicing. The Son of Baha'u'llah is mounting the heavens, bringing into ever clearer light the contrast between the gloom, the despair, the frustrations and bewilderment of the world, and the radiance, confidence, joy, and certitude of His lovers. Lift up your hearts. The day of God is here. Thanks.
Friends, we're so blessed that